It's Thursday night. We've got the weigh-in tomorrow. We've had the press conference with the push today. And I'm going to be honest with you guys. I am now absolutely buzzing for this fight. I'm not buzzing for this fight because of anything that happened at the press conference. I'm buzzing for this fight because underneath it all, really, I am a David Haye fan. And despite all the disappointments, despite the loss, despite the injuries, despite the pullouts, I'm still allowing myself to believe there's one more, maybe two more great David Haye nights left in the tank. So tonight, I found myself ploughing through Behind the Ropes, episode 1 and episode 2. For those who haven't seen it, it's on the Sky Sports Boxing YouTube channel. I wouldn't say it's necessarily essential viewing. These two guys, we've seen a lot of them. Obviously, we had the first fight, the build-up to that. We had the second fight that never was, when David Haye pulled out. And now it kind of feels like third time round. And a lot of the chat is the same. You know, a lot of the chat hasn't evolved. It's the same themes. It's the same stories. It's the same personas. So you're not really watching this and getting a hell of a lot of new information from it. But you guys know I'm a junkie for this sort of stuff. I presume by virtue of the fact you're watching this video, a lot of you fall into that same category. And for me, you know, I am excited to see David Haye back in the ring. And I know people won't like me saying this, but there's no point in me having a YouTube channel if I don't be honest. You know, David Haye for me, there's a lot of memories. There's a lot of memories of me getting into boxing. A lot of memories about me sort of converting from a casual boxing fan to a, you know, someone who loved boxing. And David Haye was a catalyst for all of that. And when I think back to peak David Haye, you know, it's still for me, gets the butterflies going, if you like. And you know, whilst I'm realistic enough to acknowledge that peak David Haye is a thing of the past, I'm still excited to see him return. And the cocktail of David Haye and Tony Bellew makes an exciting combination. So in this video, we're going to talk very briefly about a few of the things that came out of this Behind the Ropes two-part documentary. We may talk very slightly about the push and the shove at the press conference today. It's not something that I view as massively relevant, but people want to hear about it, so maybe we'll do a minute on that at the end. So one of the major talking points from Behind the Ropes episode 1 was Tony Bellew sparring with Jordan Gill, and I'm under the impression that received a lot of criticism from the boxing hardcore. How can Tony Bellew really be prepping for a fighter as dangerous and deadly as David Haye by fighting a featherweight prospect in sparring? Now, I saw an interview with Dave Colwell today, and he basically said Bellew's sparring partner pulled out that day, so the option was spar Jordan Gill or don't spar at all. It wasn't a deliberate tactic to spar Jordan Gill. They just wanted to get Bellew working, so thought they'd do it rather than nothing. And there are some benefits to sparring someone from a lighter weight class because of the speed and because of the reactions and that sort of thing. And, you know, fair play if that's true. I guess if Bellew's sparring partner pulled out, it's just one of those things. And, you know, I guess better he gets some work and some exercise rather than none at all. Behind the Ropes portrays it differently. You know, they portray it as if Bellew's in there with Jordan Gill because, you know, it's a strategy for him to be fighting a smaller guy. So I can see why it led to some criticism and some concern as to, you know, how professional is this build-up to the fight if they're choosing to spar a featherweight for someone as dangerous as David Haye. So it's kind of interesting. They, you know, the way Dave Colwell presents it, very reasonable, very rational. The way it's portrayed in the programming, slightly odd. So take from that what you will. Bellew does his usual humble beyond belief, can't take any praise persona. You know, Bellew's one of these guys who absolutely thrives off being the underdog, hates the idea of himself being successful. He makes a big point about how he bumped into Idris Elba and was so starstruck. Dave Colwell and he make a big point about how he believes the guys in his gym are so much better than him. You know, I've seen Bellew in countless interviews before talk about how he's just a fat scouser from Liverpool, how he doesn't have any money, how he's the B-side. You know, he makes this big thing about not being bothered about walking glass, not being bothered about being Bellew Haye or Haye Bellew. You know, Tony Bellew is just one of these characters. He thrives off that underdog role, and he's not very good at accepting praise. He clearly hates it when David Haye is giving him credit for his performance in the first fight. Bellew seems to find that very, very, very uncomfortable for me, and his sort of natural state is to sort of self-deprecate, if you like. Haye, the complete antithesis of that, is a funny scene where Haye is sitting there with his son's tennis coats, and he said, "I'll be honest, I was no more nervous for the fight than I am standing here right now. My heartbeat was absolutely level. You know, I completely overlooked Tony Bellew. I'm really hopeful that changes second time." You know, but Haye is just such a confident, gleefully arrogant persona. You know, he's standing there literally saying, "I hope I get nervous for this second fight because it's going to bring out the emphasis of me." You know, lots of emphasis on David Haye's Achilles injury being okay. They show him doing a lot of work on the ladder. They show him, you know, exercising in a way that suggests that his Achilles is fine. He's keen to stress that his Achilles is better than ever. You know, hasn't been that bad. You know, there's not been any recurrences of the problem. So let's hope that is the case. In the second episode, for me, it actually had me almost in tears of laughter. It's very funny with the benefit of hindsight. Flashback to Haye Bellew 1. And it shows Haye and Shane McGuigan with aviator sunglasses on a yacht in Miami. You see Haye in a jacuzzi being served a protein shake in a martini glass by a waitress when he's reclining in the jacuzzi. You hear Haye talking about happiness being the key ingredient of his camp. He says there's been a lot of day trips. There's been a lot of jet skiing, you know. In terms of his training, you see him working out with a yoga instructor. All about Haye enjoying himself, relaxing, taking it easy. Absolute comedy gold looking back on it in hindsight. You know, at the time, I thought it was relatively funny even the first time around, but the perception was David Haye was going to blow through Tony Bellew in 30 seconds. So you could kind of see why he was sitting there in the jacuzzi and doing yoga and jet skiing. With the benefit of hindsight, with how that fight turned out, you know, it does look a bit ridiculous. It does look a bit ridiculous. What else? There's a few touching scenes with Tony Bellew. You know, Bellew's one of these characters, always makes a big deal over his wife and kids. Pretty much gone viral over the internet about Tony Bellew making it home to his wife and kids. One or two touching scenes where his partner, wife, I don't know what she is, talking about why she doesn't come to the fights. There's obviously Bellew in tears, very emotional over his wife's brother, Bellew's brother-in-law, who sadly passed away recently. You know, touching scenes to see. And Bellew, you know, even though I've been highly critical over the years of him as a fighter, he does come across as a nice guy. He does come across as a likeable character. And, you know, you kind of feel that, you know, he is that underdog again going into this fight. It's funny, you know, Bellew first time round was like the great British underdog. This time round, the perception for me is that the public, and I'm not talking about myself personally, I'm talking about the public, just from comments I see online and comments on my videos, the public are starting to find Tony Bellew a little bit annoying. Maybe it's the same chat over and over again. Maybe it's this constant self-deprecation, you know, etc. But you kind of get the impression the public are slightly annoyed by Tony Bellew. But for me, he does always come across well. And I've got to say, he looks sharp in this footage. Look, I'm not someone who makes a prediction based on a public workout. I'm not someone who makes a prediction based on pad work. Bellew looks sharp. He looks in decent shape. He's throwing punches well. His punches are constructed nicely. There's a bit of hand speed there. He's putting combinations out there fairly well on the pads in the public workout. He looked He looked like he was on point. You know, I'm expecting the best Tony Bellew for this fight. David Haye, there's a good feature on him with Ismail Salas. Salas is obviously quite a quirky character himself. You know, we talk about David Haye's previous quirky training camps in Miami. You see Salas talking about flow, boxing to music, almost dancing around in there in his, I don't know, 10-inch platforms that he's wearing. Yeah, Salas himself is a quirky character. Clearly, this guy is a guy of huge and immense pedigree, Cuban school, knows the game inside out. You know, I'm not a boxing historian. I haven't done my research on Salas to the extent I could have done, but you know, I know some of the names he's been involved with. I know the pedigree, and you have to presume he knows his stuff. But looking at them in there, it still seems like a somewhat unorthodox camp to me. Maybe more orthodox than sitting in a jacuzzi on a yacht, but unorthodox nevertheless. You know, interesting programming. Do you learn anything new? No, but as always, it is well put together stuff. It's entertaining stuff, and if you're a junkie like myself for this kind of stuff, and you've got 50 minutes spare wanting to consume some boxing entertainment, you could do worse than what's this. A few comments on the press conference day and the push for Tony Bellew. My take, and I've said this before on the channel, is Tony Bellew is one of those opponents who really thrives off hating his opponents. Yeah, we've seen this time and time and time again where Bellew gets himself up for the fight, he gets himself motivated for the fight by really taking a dislike for his opponents cleverly. Ovil McKenzie, Adonis Stevenson, David Haye. I'm sure if I thought about it, there'd be even more times. And, you know, clearly for me, Tony Bellew was slightly uncomfortable with David Haye refusing to bite, slightly uncomfortable with David Haye heaping the praise on him. You know, I think he prefers when the two guys are at loggerheads. The J from the in-betweeners thing was funny. I felt Tony Bellew found it awkward because, yeah, he's in fight mode. He wants to hate on his opponent. He wants to be swearing and gearing himself up for a war. He found it difficult for me to be good-humoured, to be polite, to, you know, laugh along with David Haye during this press conference. And I think he is just at his most at ease when he can gear himself up for hating an opponent. You know, that's my take on it. There's other people like that, Dillian Whyte being a classic example. Dillian Whyte always finds a way of hating his opponent, whoever they are. You know, Ian Lewison, Robert Helenius. These are not like these are nice guys, quiet guys. Lucas Brown. You know, Dillian Whyte always finds a way of absolutely detesting his opponent. Even David Allen before their fight, you know. Some fighters are just like that, I guess. And yeah, I think that's what we saw with the push today. Do I take anything from it? Not really. It probably does create a little bit of hype. It probably does do no problems at all to boosting interest in the fight and grabbing some views ahead of the weekend. I'm certainly looking forward to this. Look, it's WWE style boxing. I'm not going to tell you this is two of the top heavyweights on the planet squaring off against each other, but it's possibly two of the top characters squaring off against each other. Guys who've been active in the sport for a long time, guys who are very well known, and whatever we thought about the fight first time round, it turned out to be a competitive and entertaining scrap despite the controversy. Let me know your thoughts. Hit me up with your comments in the section below. As ever, please subscribe. Please hit the thumbs up to support the channel. Thank you.